welcome to my Personal Finances PodCat, episode 34, where I'm going to talk about retirement goals checkpoint with Kean Seng Lim. He's an author and also a retirement coach. He actually wrote a book with the name of Retire at 55, Can or Not, which definitely sounds interesting, right? Let's welcome Kean Seng to the show.
Hi, Catherine. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Kean Seng.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Welcome to the show. Yeah, for the benefit of the audience, could you please briefly introduce yourself?
I've been retired since 2012, and it took me some time before somebody approached me to say, "Hey, why don't you do some sharing with us on how you why you were able to retire so early?" So it culminated in a book, like what Catherine has highlighted, a book called "Retire at 55, Can or Not." Now, writing this book was actually quite an emotional experience for me because it basically highlighted my life story and the 12 years that it took me to build up my retirement fund from the time I realized that I needed to do something. Okay. Prior to that, I was working like everybody else in the normal 9-to-5 job, not giving a care to what the future is. You get your income, you spend, you put some money aside, you run out of money, you dig out your savings, you spend, and the only source of retirement at that point of time was thinking about my EPF. Okay, so it dawned on me when I stopped working in Malaysia and went offshore. And that was the time when I was like, hoorah, I don't have to pay EPF anymore. I had 12% pay rise, and got to enjoy it until 6 months later, I received my EPF statement sometime in April of the new year. And I looked at my EPF statement and I go, 0.0000000. Shit. Sorry, I'm not supposed to swear, right?
That's fine.
In the final version, we'll bleep it out. So.
Okay, so I'll mind my words. So I was like, what am I going to do? And then, because for me, I started my working life as a clerk, earning about way below the current minimum wage. This one back in the late 1970s, and at the point of time where I stopped contributing to EPF, my EPF balance actually has less than what is currently the basic savings amount that you need at 55 years old. And I go like, what am I going to do? How am I going to survive on about 200,000 if I don't do something about it? So I decided to take a plunge, bite the bullet, decided to build my own, what I call in my book, my second EPF. And I basically decided to put aside almost 25% of my salary into this fund. Cannot spend as much as I used to in the initial months after I started working abroad, but it was no choice. Something had to be done. Okay. Now, writing this book also, I was a bit concerned because this is a book I think this is one of the few books that is actually written by consumer himself, who is not a financial consultant, who is not a unit trust agent, who is not an insurance agent, who is nobody in the financial planning arena. If I were to put my book there and sit next to all the other people, all the other people who are financial planning gurus and masters, I doubt anybody will want to pick up my book. So I decided I'll self-publish and I'll do my own distribution rather than everyday pass by popular bookshop, see it sitting there collecting dust. I decided to do publishing on my own, and somehow, I cannot remember how, but Steve came upon my book and we met up one day in the gardens. We shared some nice iced coffee. Yeah, and he got a copy of my book, and we started talking about it. And that was when I learned who Steve was and what he was doing. Even at that time, I didn't realize how long Steve had been in the business. If I had known that, I would have approached him from the word go to help me to have a look at what I had done for my retirement and see where I can tidy up things. Because up to that point of time, everything was almost DIY. Did it with a relationship manager from banks. He went through a couple of them. The first one that started with me left. His successor came in. His successor left. Then the successor came in, and we didn't get along. I pulled everything out. I went to another place, and it repeated. Okay. The lucky thing for me was in the process of moving around, whatever I had accumulated managed to retain its value and did not really suffer any tremendous drop in value.
Sounds like a great experience writing the book. Is there any other experience would you like to share with us about writing the book?
It's a nightmare.
How's that so?
I wrote a couple of pages. Then the famous writer block came in. It went blank for the next couple of weeks. Then I started again and found that I need to rewrite what I wrote earlier. And sort of went around iteration for a couple of weeks, and then I lost interest again. And from start to the time the book was published, including the period of time when everything was just left in the back burners, this book took me about 3.5 years to come to fruition. And even when it came to fruition, I was not sure if the structure of the book was very well set up. So I engaged an editor to help me to review the book, went through all the grammatical setups, etc. And that was when I learned I cannot write a book. There were so many rewrites that I had to put in, so many changes, so many suggestions, Up to a certain point, I couldn't recognize what I had written because of the numerous changes that took place. And then up to that point, the title of the book was, Can You Achieve Financial Freedom? Then the editor told me, if this book were to go on a bookshelf with a title that carries the word financial freedom, sorry, my friend, nobody's going to give you the second look because there are so many books in the market on financial freedom. We need to change the title. So ding dong session to and fro took us a couple of months before we finally settled on the title. And when I said it sounds a bit preposterous to tell people to retire at 55, then he said, no, you're telling people you want them to be able to retire. The 55 is you did it at 55. Other people did not do it at 55, but other people must also be able to retire. And then you throw it to them, can or not. Very non-standard English, more Malaysian English than anything else. So he says, it's catchy. So I said, okay, I'll give it a try. Book was launched in May last year. At the book launch with my colleagues from my office, took some pictures, posted it on Facebook. And before I knew it, friends of mine, ex-colleagues of mine who are still working out there, started messaging me and, can I get a copy of the book? And I was shocked that it even enticed people, ex-colleagues from as far away as Switzerland, Luxembourg. There was one in, Luxembourg. Okay, so the book found its way to Luxembourg, Switzerland, England, Philippines, Singapore, and then of course all around Malaysia. I was quite pleased when all these people showed interest in the book and people started asking me to talk to them about how they can actually even think about retirement. Something I learned early this morning. Retirement is something that is quite a new phenomenon. It didn't exist previously because the early days, due to our lower mortality rate, people do not live that long after they retire. So there was never really any real concept of retirement with back in the 60s and 70s. Even I think stretching out to the 80s, people retire and say, if I'm lucky, I'll live till 60, and then that's it. I only have to fund about 5 years of my retirement. So no big deal.
And hey, that definitely sounds familiar. So, before we go a little bit more towards the retirement planning part, just to talk a little bit more about writing, since you brought it up.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely can relate, the experience of trying to write, because at MyPF, we put out a lot of content regularly as well. And, writer's block is no joke, actually. I think there was some advice shared on a previous guest as well, who was also a writer, that, basically to just write, let it all out, actually, without even, worrying about editing and all that, but just let it all out. And then, after that, only get back to that. Yeah. So that was actually shared by Alex, who was on earlier podcast episode. So she's written number of books on and life in general. She used to be a journalist at the Star as well. And speaking of first as well, it's actually the first time I'm actually coming in a podcast as well together with Katrin. Usually you won't see me. You probably saw me in the last few lives because I was in the pre-show session and then I dropped out. But hey, we're trying something different today, so I'm in and hopefully we'll have a little bit more conversations as well. We're pleased to share as well.
Feeling very honored.
Yeah, the first, definitely. In MyPF, we're actually working on a book project right now, actually. So we were actually approached by some publishers. And, you mentioned 3.5 years to get your book out. On our side, we're actually looking at a timeline of 3.5 months to get the book out. So, yeah, a lot of work.
Very ambitious, right?
When publishers approach you, they'll definitely put a timeline to you. Because at that point of time, I didn't even think about how to publish it. So took my own sweet time to do what I wanted to do, write when I felt like writing, stop when I didn't feel like doing, restart all over again. And then
that sounds like retirement, right? You can do it at your own sweet pace.
At the end of the first draft, the whole book was so disjointed that we couldn't place everything in a proper sequence. It was a challenge. I have to thank my editor. By the way, my editor was also formerly from the Star.
Oh, okay. Small world.
Yeah. So she's a lady, so she helped me. She went through all the things. She corrected my grammar. I never knew I wrote so horrendous English in my life. She sort of put me right and said, "Your sentences in the book are just too long. You cannot have a whole paragraph using just one sentence. You have to start breaking it up, shorten up all the various phrases, putting punctuation marks accordingly, and then try to reconstruct it again. And it was quite a challenge."
Sometimes writing short sentences is an art as well. I think there was, like LinkedIn, for example, so people now also write short posts, articles on LinkedIn, and there's actually a word limit. And I recently read a LinkedIn article that was on the topic of writing, so happened. And it was actually sharing that, your writing, sentences should be, within 20 words or less, actually. So this is one instance where, if when you read something out, and it takes your breath away, that's not a good thing, actually. You shouldn't be taking your breath away when you're actually reading out an entire sentence.
Yep.
Kean Seng, so since the book was all about retirement, so would you share with us why is retirement planning so important to you personally?
Well, like what I said earlier on, retirement planning was never in my mind at all when I was working. Being in the private sector, we had no fallback like a government pension or anything like that. We only had the EPF. Given that I had only contributed to the EPF for about 20-something, less than 20 years since I started working, like I said, the amount in my EPF account was inconsequential, minuscule. I think Steve
and I we're in similar boats because we're also.
Well, I think Steve will have more contribution in his account in 1 year than I had in my 20 years of working. I decided that I needed to do something, and one of the ways to do it was to plan for my retirement. I was lucky in that I got hold of a set of books, which basically book one was a novel. It was a very interesting anecdotes of 5 different types of people who suddenly learned how to do financial planning. What were the hurdles they faced? What were the ideas they got? How they learned about it? It got me to thinking that if those people can do it, why can't I? And the book was on basically unit trust financial freedom.
So there's a
After
bit
I
like
finished,
positive FOMO, is it? Fear of missing out in a way.
in a way, but that term never existed in my lifetime during that up to now. Book 2 was a bit more technical, quite dry. It talked about the Malaysian financial landscape, unit trust, stocks, stock exchange, etc. How to analyze fund performances, company performances. That was the thing that really started me off, and I was very glad when I finished my book. I bumped into one of the writers of that book at one of the FPAM seminars that I attended. So I went up to him and I said, "Sir, I have this book that you wrote." Then he was like, "Is it still around?" And I said, No. The book has been with me for the last almost 15 years. Okay. So I said,
you can still recognize the author's face, the picture and the real life looks the same.
He looks exactly the same. You know who I'm talking about, right, Steve?
I can guess, yeah.
So I told him, I need to catch up with you one day to autograph the book for me. So then we started talking, and I said, I was also writing a book on my journey to retirement. And he says, "Send me a copy of the book. I want to have a look." So I said, okay. I sent him a copy of the book. He wrote back, gave me some pointers, and told me, "Here is a introduction endorsement that I'm ready to write for you. When your book is ready, put this endorsement in." So it went in, and the only thing I had to sort of remove was the company that he was representing, because he's from a competitor company from where I am, and so it didn't sound nice for my book to have an endorsement by a competitor.
I would think that's the best sort of endorsement, actually, but I may be wrong about that.
Well, for me, the endorsement was because he was the guy who really gave me the insight into financial planning. He was the one who sort of explained in very clear, simple English, because I found myself able to emulate one of the characters that he had in his first book: a family with growing children, stuck in a 9-to-5 job, making no ends, making no progress with their financial planning, and how the character in the book helped him to understand what financial planning is all about, what he needed to do, and sort of guided them along the way.
I'm sure a lot of our audience can relate to that as well. And why should people actually start planning early for retirement? I don't know, you talk to someone in their 20s or even 30s, late millennials, Gen Z, etc. And you talk about retirement, is this thing is that so far away, it totally doesn't click or make sense at all. Yeah.
It doesn't. Yeah. Honestly, in my interactions with Gen Zs, millennials.
I'm a millennial, technically.
Yep. They looked at me and tell me, I want to enjoy myself. Upon talking further, they're all in the gig economy. They don't even hold a permanent job. They work when they want, or they are involved in startup ventures, which doesn't seem to have any real destination where they are heading to, because they're still new and they're still struggling along, And when you talk to them about this, then you tell them that they need to sort of prepare something on financial planning. They have no clue what you're talking about. They don't appreciate what you're talking about. It takes a lot of time to break through to them.
So as a retirement coach, Kean Seng, what are the benefits of planning early for retirement?
Planning early for retirement, you have time on your side. Okay, when you're younger, when you try to think about what do I need in order to be able to achieve, example, R1,000,000 by the time I retire at age 60. If you were to start doing it when you were younger, maybe in your 20s, you will find that in order to achieve R1,000,000 retirement fund, on a monthly basis, you do not have to put in a lot of money. Okay, it's only when you start growing older in your years. Like when I first started planning for my retirement, I was already 43. Okay, so based on what I later learned, I learned that was that if you're in your 40s, in order to achieve R1,000,000 when you retire, you need to put aside quite a substantial amount of money. And I don't think many people are able to do that towards the end. If they had started saving earlier in their 20s and 30s, by the time they reach their 40s, they might even migrate to this amount that you see here, and their nest egg in the end might be more than R1,000,000. You know, what people always seem to tell me is when I talk to people about retirement, they always tell me, "Oh, you need to put aside 10,000 to start, 5,000 to start." I said, "No, you don't have to do that. At your age, in your mid-20s or early 30s, start with whatever amount you can. Work on it, and then start building it up."
But isn't there a certain absolute minimum that you need to start with, in your opinion?
Well, I'll be very honest. Those days, you needed R1,000 to start with. With the latest offerings in town, you don't even need that. And especially the newest ventures that you see nowadays, where you have got robo advisory. You can start with R100.
Yeah, fintech is changing the picture, right?
Yeah, correct. Fintech has really changed everything around, and unfortunately, fintech is also killing the business of the established fund management companies, especially with new entrants to the marketplace. Fintech companies go up to them and say, "You can put in R100 every month, 200 ringgit, whatever it is, and you can see the value grow over a period of time." The traditional companies will say, "No, you need a minimum of 1,000, you need a minimum of 5,000 in order to start investing with us." And later you learn that after I give him the 1,000 or the 5,000, there is this horrendous sales charge that I have to pay, and which means that my upfront initial investment starts incurring loss from day one before it can even break even. And then the fintech guys jump on this and say, "Oh, we don't charge any sales charge, it's zero sales charge, so whatever you give us is fully invested." And of course, from a financial planner's point of view, it's a big challenge for us to be able to differentiate whether the client should go using the fintech offerings or whether they should go using the traditional unit trust way.
Well, since you mentioned about financial planners, and a little bit maybe Katrina some input as well. Personally, I'm of the stand that competition is actually good, and I actually think there's actually a convergence actually between fintech and the human touch financial planners. I think most digital managers are also moving in that direction as well. So, if you're really talking about financial planning, helping out someone to plan for their retirement, and not about putting money into, the salesperson's pocket, actually, lower fees are definitely great, will, your graphic actually shows as well, because the earlier they start, the less you pay in fees, the easier it is to climb and get ahead. Yeah. I know, Kat, you have any input on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think as you mentioned about that, combining financial planning, a holistic, from a holistic point of view, and also from a third party point of view, and together with what we have now with fintech, everything is so easy now, where people don't have to go for courses to learn about investment, to learn about all this retirement planning.
Yeah, you can start at MyPF.my. Yeah, that's a good resource to start with.
Definitely, we have all these free resources for you. You basically don't have to knock around thinking about where to find all these information. The informations are all there, and then they have the right people to talk to. Things are getting so much easier now.
Yeah,
Yep.
I would agree, because my first interaction with a licensed financial planner was when I actually retired back in 2012. At that point of time, I was actually looking at what I could do in order to sort of manage whatever fund I had, my retirement fund that I've accumulated.
So this was already in Malaysia, when you were talking
in Malaysia,
to a financial planner?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, one of our pioneers in financial planning. So we met up, and the first thing he looked at me was, "How much are you giving me to talk to me about planning for you?" And I go like, "Excuse me, I want to explore what can I do with my money." Correct. How much money are you talking about?
Who is that? Who is that? Don't answer that.
Yeah, don't.
So in the end, I was told, okay lah. Since you want to start something like that, he walked out of the meeting room. He called somebody else, one of the staff that he had, asked him to come and talk to me, and we didn't get anywhere. So we just went our separate ways. And ever since then, every time I bump into him, he keeps on telling me, "Why did you not become a client of mine? If you actually wanted, or if you have actually told my assistant that you wanted me to do it for you, I would have actually looked at it. I would have actually given it some thought. So I say, now mine is over. It's water under the bridge. I am now in the same line. And we are actually complementing one another in our services to the investing public." So he was like, "Okay," then he walks away.
That is such a courteous response. Kudos. Yeah. If it's for somebody else, they might have said something, mean to this person.
I sort of wanted to punch him in the nose, but then
Oh, wow. Okay, that's behind the scene.
I figured it will only get me into trouble. So why do I have to go down that way?
But granted, that experience, which I believe is an isolated case, because I know, there's a lot of good financial planners who really care for the clients and, really put their clients' needs first. But, what was it that, made you want to reach out to a financial planner? Why did you want to plan in the first place? How's that related to retirement and the goals that you had?
Okay, because at that point of time, when I retired, I had all the investments that I had made up to date. And all of that were basically done via the bank, via unit trust agents. Whenever I talked to these people, all they wanted me to do was, "So, Mr. Lim, can you? We've got this new fund. Can I interest you to invest in this new fund? Maybe we just move some of that money from that particular fund that you're holding and put it into here." We're not talking financial planning at all. It's basically like what we say, product pushing and sales. And I was like, how will that help me to plan for my to manage and maintain what I have accumulated? So I bumped into one or two financial planners along the way. Of course, through Facebook, I first learned about KC Lau, and from KC Lau, I bumped into I met somebody who was actually working in Penang, and I gave him a call when I was in Penang. We met up, and he says, "When I come down to KL, let's sit down and talk." He came, we talked, and then in the end he says, "If you are really serious on looking after yourself, I can give you pointers, but get yourself certified. Then you will really understand what is required, what are the things that you need to do as a financial planner, what you need to look at, how you go about doing things in the future." That was when I started following around the social media, trying to understand as much about financial planning from various people who were sharing information online as much as I could.
Since we are talking about financial planning, in your opinion, is there a noticeable difference, relation between planning for retirement and achieving their goals?
Oh, there is a big difference. Because one of the things that I find sometimes when we sit down with people to talk about their goals, they want to do, or they are trying to plan for the best of everything, not knowing whether it is something that they can achieve. And then when you break it down and go back to what it entails for them to do to build up to build up the nest egg for their goals, and then they go like, the mouth cannot close, and then the conversation just ends there, and then you have to go back to them and start telling them, okay, we have your goals up there. Let's talk about what you have today, what you are doing today. How can we plan and identify what you have today in order to see what you can afford to put aside and start investing? Because like the famous equation goes, to people is income minus expenses equals savings. And in many, many months in a year, income minus expenses equals negative. So there's no savings, and they will tell you, wait, I'm getting a salary adjustment, I'm getting a good bonus, then we can look into it. And I went through some of that. I heard stories about this where this person was sharing. The first time he met his client, this prospect of his, the client was earning about 5,000 ringgit a month. And he says, I cannot plan anything. Couple of years later, when they met up again, they said, yeah, I want to do something. And then they sat down and then he calculated and said that he's now earning about 8,000 ringgit, but his expenses has actually also kept pace with his income. He still has got nothing, And it went on and on and on until finally when he was about to retire, and then the guy told him, so why did you not consider what we said? Then the client turned around, the prospector told him, why did you not insist to me 20 years ago when we first started talking? I have to do it this way. Now I got no time, no more time, So how am I going to retire? What would you say, Steve?
Well, this is we really need to go back to wisdom in old days. And there was actually a very famous author who actually wrote this, and the author you might know is actually Charles Dickens, and he wrote it way back. And this was actually his annual income £20, annual expenditure £19, result happiness. Annual income £20,
Yes.
annual expenditure £21, results in misery. Yeah, and that's the simple truth of it about income and expenses.
Correct. Yes. Now we always I learn to tell people we need to revamp that equation around. Adopt what is commonly known in the industry as pay yourself first. So it's always income minus savings equals expenses. You cannot spend anything if you have not put aside your savings amount. You try to squeeze and say 5% of your income, 10% of your income, and see where they break down and say, I cannot go over 15%. I will not be able to survive spending on my spending if I put aside 15% of my income. Then we restart again and say, okay, now how much do you, where is your comfort zone? And once you're committed to the comfort zone, you have committed investor, somebody who is willing to commit to that amount of money every month.
Yeah, I think that commitment is really important. And, I think we see, especially if you can actually automate it, actually, I think that works really well for most people. Just make sure that, the whole concept paying yourself first, moving it off, automatically getting it safe and invested. And then, after that, you can, basically throw a party and burn everything else in the month, and you're still fine, actually, because, you have already saved and invested.
And that's the thing, because a lot of people that I come across, they are not educated on the need for financial planning. All they are told is invest in this fund, invest in that particular product. This particular asset will yield you 12% per annum, But after that, where do you go? I had a friend who keeps on telling me, I swear by the stock market. I make money every month in the stock market. I say, yes. Where are your profits? He turned, look left, look right. I said, I've spent it all. So he's still back where he is when he started with his initial capital. He keeps on making money. He keeps on spending it. At the end of the day, he says, I don't have anything to more than what I started with. If I have to retire, what am I going to do? I said, well, then you shouldn't have spent your profits. You should have reinvested your profits, saved it in a separate place, continue with your normal stock market trade. And every time you make some money, put it aside, put it somewhere separate, and don't touch it.
Yeah, I think there's really a need, to move, from active income, whether it's from your employment or trading. It's actually active income because you actually need to be there, and at wee hours, even if you're, doing short-term trading, yeah. And so you need to actually move that active income into passive income, actually, and that's what a lot of people struggle with, actually. And I would say, retirement, or you call it financial freedom, financial independence, it's all about how do you actually build up that constant pool of passive income.
Yeah, definitely. The challenge is to educate people on the need to do this.
Yeah, I think the mindset is very important. Like all these examples that you mentioned, they don't have the mindset to plan for retirement, and don't have the mindset to actually take charge of their financial situation. Actually, that is the whole reason, and that's why all the procrastination, and they don't feel it until they actually get burned. So
correct.
Yeah, that is why education is so important.
Yeah. So before we move into the next segment, we're a little bit past halfway. So for those who have just tuned in, very good evening and welcome. We have Kean Seng Lim, retirement author and coach with us here this evening, and we have the lovely Catherine, PodCat. So for those who have always been wondering why it's called PodCat, that's because the host of the show is Catherine, and PodCat actually means someone who loves podcasts, and it's also my first time joining Catherine as a co-host for this evening as well. So again, a very warm welcome to everyone. Let's continue the great conversation that we're having here.
Yep. So Kean Seng, so in your opinion, does retirement planning change in the face of the new normal that we are in right now?
Definitely. The sad thing about this is actually if people had actually understood financial planning, not necessarily retirement planning, financial planning, the concepts of it very much earlier, the pain that we're going through during this period today would have been avoided tremendously. I would say more than 75% of the general public do not even understand what an emergency cash buffer is, let alone investing. And without that, when something like what happened hits, what is happening today hits, they have nothing to fall back on. Okay, and change is something, I will put it like what we learned, change is the only constant in life. You don't change, you get left behind, you face the consequences,
You go the way of dinosaurs, right?
Yeah. And it does not only look at retirement planning or financial planning, it deals with our life as well. I am looking at the possibility that once all of this is over, the way we do things previously will may no longer exist.
And do you think that's already happened? That things have already changed as it is. The whole world has this year in 2020 already changed. What's your thoughts on
it? It has started. Okay, I would never have thought about doing anything online. We don't have to go back that far. Just last year, when people call you and say, "Hey, let's do a FaceTime." FaceTime was basically to keep in touch with family members who are overseas, who are who you're trying to find out how they are getting along with their lives, etc., etc. There was never any business involved. Now we are talking to prospects. Now we're talking to clients, updating our clientele, what is happening, what they need to look at, how things are, and they are very willing to do it because they say, I think I don't want to see you. I'm afraid to catch up with you in case something untoward happens. Stay
I
at the
can
other end of the table.
totally relate and relate with that. Yeah, I have clients who are half the world away. Australia, Netherlands, etc. Some of them I've never even met face to face. In all honesty,
I mean, those are different clientele. I'm talking about people that you meet in person in KL in the Klang Valley. They'll kind of tell you, please, stay away.
2 meters away.
Stay on
1 meter is not long.
Stay on that end of the table. Don't come nearer. Anyway, you have to talk to them, and you need to show them their portfolio, how it is performing. Is that I am afraid of taking that paper from your hand.
You sanitize that first.
Yeah. So a lot of people are looking at, do you sanitize it, And I guess it will continue to change. And we are looking at even, in the industry, people doing online recruitment of staff, where you don't even get to meet them face to face to talk to them. You just have to see them over the internet, and is that really the person that we are supposed to be talking to? How do I know it is not somebody who is sitting in on his behalf, because we have never met him before in our lives? Things have actually, we need to adapt to these changes.
Yeah, definitely a lot of change, different industries, etc. I feel talking about, we had Alex come on talking about, how the food and beverage industry, we had Bob from Taufulo sharing us on that as well. Next week, actually, on Tuesday, we have a very special guest. We have actually Marina Mahathir, who's actually the founder of Zafigo, a travel site for women. So she'll be also talking about the future of travel and how is travel changing in this new normal that we're in. So very excited to have Marina Mahathir on. But back to today, though, we're talking about new normal and the key topic here on retirement. How about retirement? How is retirement changing or in the face of the pandemic and our new normal?
Currently, what I am seeing is that people are starting to realize that just talking to salespeople are not good enough anymore. They are starting to realize the need of talking to a proper licensed financial planner, because they have suddenly woke up to realize that, I've never been taught about the benefits of a proper financial plan, a health check. What I need to consider, did I look into the correct type of insurance that I have to buy? Did I get the right insurance in the first place? Are my investments what they should be? The awareness have started to creep in. This is something, for me, is a good realization and indeed a challenge, because I would feel that a lot of people out there are not prepared to face this type of new clientele.
So you're saying it needs to be more holistic, so retirement planning, that means you're not just talking about, that retirement pool at the end of the day, but all the aspects of it?
Yep. I know people who have accumulated huge sums of money for their retirement plan. They forgot about their protection. They have no medical insurance. They have life insurance, and they come to a point of time where if anything happens to them, from a medical emergency, it eats into their retirement. It eats into their retirement pool, because then they were never advised or told what is the benefit of having a medical card, a medical policy. To them, they've always been told, you are working, what? Your employer is paying for it. Yep. So, yeah.
保險老人嘅啦，保險人哋啊老人嘅。
保險係，如果我死嘅時，我驚愛攤位嘛。But 我破病嘅時啊。Who is going to pay for my medical expenses?
For a moment, I was thinking the podcast suddenly changed language.
We are multilingual.
Yeah, we are. All Malaysians are actually. But now that we talk about we are all talking about retirement planning. So what actions should someone who is near retiring or newly retired do at the moment?
Well, one of the first things that they should be doing is to really review what they have achieved so far. What are their assets that they have? and basically to go over it with a fine-tooth comb, preferably with a licensed financial planner who will be able to sort of identify for them. Yes, you have got A, B, C, D, and E, but you are missing F, G, and H. How do we readjust what you have in order to cater for the missing components? Because I will put it this way, it actually came down personally to me as well. Okay, I was one of those who never had any medical insurance previously as well. I never took any medical card policy until I was in my early 50s. And by which time I had already been diagnosed with hypertension for the last 3 years. And then the insurance company says, I need to load your policy. But then I became aware of it because when I was, at that point of time, I was still working. When I was working abroad, this was very nearby, just down south. We had insurance card that we take every time I need to go and see a doctor. The company pays for it. I don't have to pay a single cent. And I was like, I think I need to get one of these for myself. And that was when I came back to Malaysia. I went to the bank that I was having my investments with, and I said, what do I need to get a medical card? And then the whole process went through. And then the personal banker was telling me, actually, this is something you should have considered getting about 5-10 years ago when you're in your early 40s. Because that would have been a time when you were at the peak of your health before all this elderly sickness starts to creep in one by one, and which may even stop you from actually being accepted for medical coverage. Then whatever problems you have medically, you have to pay for it yourself. And with medical costs going up by the year, it's indeed a frightening thing to think about. I have a very personal experience with my father. He was diagnosed with cancer, treatable, but the cost of the treatment was astronomical. But being a government servant, all his medical treatments were paid for by the pension department. So if he had not been a government servant who enjoyed these benefits, all of us as the children will never be able to afford to give him that type of pay for his medical treatment. This is where your medical insurance, your medical card really, really comes into play. And over the past 5 years or so, you would have seen that the amount of benefits and the amount of coverage that is provided by this medical card has grown tremendously. Gone were the days when your medical coverage was 500,000. People are now throwing figures up to 1 million, 2 million, 5 million medical coverage for you. And the premiums compared to 5-10 years ago are almost the same.
Yeah, definitely. The world continues to change as well and evolve around that. Yeah. A little bit more gearing towards the direction of retirement funds, though. So, how about someone who is near retiring or just newly retired, actually, what sort of tips would you have as a retirement coach for this group of people who are near retired or, just retired, especially from the investment point of view?
Okay, a lot of times during their younger years, they would have always been accumulating a lot of high-risk equity funds, equity stocks. As they grow older, we need to start moving some of that into a more conservative, more balanced type of investment, where we need to try to secure permanent, if possible, a permanent retirement pool where the value fluctuation will be minimized, i.e., moving it into money market, bond fund, money market funds, where the volatility is very much lower. Keeping a small chunk in equity funds to tie up to ensure that the growth is still there. so that as they start to draw down from their retirement pool, the returns and the growth from the equity portion can sort of keep on topping up the retirement fund. The main concern I've actually seen at one point of time was people was selling the idea of accumulating a pool of assets and then being able to live off the income the passive income that you will receive from your fund without touching your capital, or what we call the capital preservation methodology. This concept works very, very well in a rising stock market or in a stock market that is not bearish, because as the amounts are withdrawn from the fund, the value of their remaining investments can still make up the difference. But going forward, the volatility of the market may actually cause this capital preservation amount to start to reduce. At least they are still in a better situation than those people who have actually followed the capital liquidation model. Because in the capital liquidation model, you predict that once you touch 60 years old, you retired, this fund will be able to last you for the next 25 years. Continues to remain where is it or continue to rise. If the market starts to fall or goes nowhere, in 20 years' time, you might find that your retirement pool is getting very, very depleted. And it's going to be a sad time. You'll find that you actually run out of money before you run out of life. And if you have got no other things to fall back on except that retirement money that you have, I really don't know how to advise you or how to help you.
Yeah, I think it's really heartbreaking. I've seen pictures of those, those who are really elderly, and they are forced to go back to work, and employment options are much more limited as well. And you imagine, someone in their late 60s, 70s, and they're working at McDonald's, just trying to make sure that they have enough to actually survive. Actually, so yeah, that definitely heartbreaking to see that.
Correct. So these are things that people should really take seriously at least 5 years before they retire, to review it, get proper advice, what they should be doing. You may have been accumulating on your own, DIY all the way until you're in your 55. You've got this huge amount of money that you have there. Now it's time to start looking at how are you going to prepare yourself, and what you need to keep, what you need to let it grow, and what are the things that you need to slow down and keep it as secure as possible. Chances are, if you were to do it yourself, you always say, I still have time on my side. Why do I need to worry? I still have time. That's where you need an independent third party to check you and say, no, sir, you need to do something about this. Let's put this portion aside. The rest, you want to do whatever you want to do, I let you do it. But this portion, we need to maintain it in this particular manner, so that over the next years, we will have something solid to depend on. We are not looking at losing everything or having nothing, having everything in a particular area where, if the market turns, whatever you have accumulated goes with you, goes down the drain.
Yeah, Kean Seng. I believe along your journey as from being someone who planned your retirement and until now being a retirement coach, could you share a very real life interesting story of someone who actually planned their retirement successfully, and lesson that you learned from that?
Plan their retirement successfully, I think, tends to be rarer than people who did not plan properly and retired early, came to regret it after a couple of years. I remember sharing with Steve this particular incident about a story I read. It's not somebody that I know, but it's something that I read about. High wage earner couple decided that they have accumulated $5-6 million in their retirement pool. They can afford to call it quits in their mid-30s. they had quite over a period of time built up some successful businesses which they could cash in, take out whatever money they have, and sort of together with their retirement investment say, I'll leave this. I'll survive on this for the rest of. We'll survive on this for the rest of our lives. Sold off whatever investments they had, and started enjoying themselves. Something happened a couple of years later when the wife became pregnant. After the baby was born, their main concern turned to how will they provide the best for the child that they have, and where they were staying, it was not cheap to provide for a child, a young child, a growing child, and then into adulthood for the child's education. By the time the child was hitting his teen years, the father found that I need to go back to work. We cannot, if we continue where we are going, by the time my son graduates, I won't have any retirement fund left for myself. And we have not even hit 55 years old yet. So even though they had achieved financial freedom, retired early, FIRE, okay, but because they never foresaw the changes that would happen in the future, it caused them to get off their financial independence and get back to work. So the couple had to get back to work to start to rebuild their retirement nest egg.
Yeah, I would totally agree with
like
that.
Happens.
Yeah, one of the criticism about financial independence, retire early is when they really so-called retire early, financial independence, but they're really living on a really really tight budget, and if anything just goes off a little bit, another child, healthcare costs or something unexpected happens, and the whole plan just gets derailed from retirement.
Yep.
In order to be able to achieve FIRE, you must have really looked into all the possibilities that could happen in your future life. If you achieve financial independence and retire at 55, chances are the likelihood of having to support another child, where the baby, unless you remarry and have another baby, is very remote. Okay, so the chances of people who have successfully retired with financial independence by the time they are 55 or 60 years old, their chances of surviving retirement is very much higher than a person who declares that he's financially independent and retires before he is 50 years old. You never know what will happen in the next couple of years. Have you thought about the longevity in your family? Not every one of us will fall within the range of the mortality rate in the country. And I look at my own family and I say that I need to be able to survive for at least another 25, 30 years from where I am today. So I need to be able to be comfortable, that what I have accumulated or what I have achieved so far, it must be able to last that number of years. Of course, I can say no. My children, you have to support me. But then you have to also remember that the children also have to support themselves. And you don't want people to be caught in the sandwich generation, where you have to pay for yourself, you have to pay for your children, and also you have to pay for your parents. It is not going to be a very pleasant situation to be in.
That's why having a very complete financial plan, a very holistic one, and with the advice from professional is so important, right? So
yes, definitely.
It looks like we are almost coming to the end of our session. So before we wrap up, what is that one big audacious habit or goal that you want our audience to take action right now? Especially me.
Engage a licensed financial planner to help you. I never had that privilege. Okay, I learned the hard way.
Yes.
The only advantage for me was that can happily say that in the last few years of my working life, I was in the arena where financial products, financial advice was something that were freely given. I learned from my clients, in my consultancy work. So even though it may not be relevant to what is happening in Malaysia, because that was overseas, but the principles behind it stuck with me, and I accepted that if I need to continue to live a happy life, I need to make sacrifices. A lot of people, I don't think, can make that type of sacrifice today. Try telling somebody who eats at posh restaurants 3 nights a week when they were working that after they retired, they might only be able to do that once a month or once every 3 months. They will freak out. They are not able to adjust downgraded retirement life. Of course, I'm not talking like what Steve was suggesting, surviving on instant noodles and toast bread. At least can get your chap fan and your char kway teow lah.
Good enough.
Maybe once in a while for special occasions, splurge, but that shouldn't be a common practice anymore.
Right. So here it comes to our last session, which is the random question generator game, actually. So this is gonna be generator that will generate a random question from a 10,000 over combination. So you will have to choose either one of this answer, and not just that, you will have to explain why did you choose that. And I will get to ask you one question, and then you get to ask me one question back, to be fair. Right, let's go straight to the question.
I don't get to choose what question to ask.
You unfortunately you don't. Okay, so this is your question. So I'll read out the question for you. Who would you more likely have an argument with, whether it's Chris Rock or Bill Gates? I would say not a heated argument, a healthy kind of argument. I would say
Bill Gates. He would be a more rational person to talk to or argue with. Chris Rock might just go off tangent and go everywhere else except what you're supposed to be talking about.
I missed it actually. The line was actually breaking. Did you already answer the question?
Yep. I said I would rather argue with Bill Gates than Chris Rock, because Bill Gates would be a more rational person to have an argument with. Chris Rock being Chris Rock, he will go off tangent and you may end up arguing over the wrong things.
How much will be enough? This question is a bit funny. Is that still asking me to choose from one of this? I guess he's trying to ask me like, which one would you think would I think is enough, whether it's financial freedom or a dream.
You cannot say a dream job with MyPF, huh?
Okay. Well, hopefully I don't piss off my boss by answering this. But if I would answer this, I think these two are very highly related. Not being too, but I'll just say like financial freedom. I'll choose and choose to anything I like to do, right? Then I can basically create the dream job that I want. And at the same time, create the dream job for anybody else as well. That's the thing about financial freedom, I believe.
Please make sure Steve heard what you say, so that he can make sure you achieve financial freedom and create dream jobs for people in MyPF.
Yeah. I guess that's a lot of entrepreneurs would like to do, I guess. Like having the thinking that, with creating a company, starting a company or establishment, like shouldn't be just about a job or just like making money itself. It's also to create the kind of job that it's, that is meaningful for a lot of people.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. All right. I guess that's the end of our session today. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Kean Seng.
Thank you, Kat. Hope to catch up with you again. Okay, good night.
All right, good night. Thanks, Kean Seng. Well, thanks everyone for watching. Thank you. And I really enjoy learning from Kean Seng. I hope you guys have learned something from him as well. If I were to summarize one of the many things that he's mentioned, I guess the mindset, the mentality of like planning towards retirement is really, really important. I remember he mentioned about how somebody would think that they have too much time on their side and like retirement is too far away for their planning, but which is not true. Like everyone should start planning right now, like whether it's starting from a bit by bit. We have, yes, although you have time on your side, but it's definitely going to be easier if you start planning right now instead of waiting until close to retirement age. Well, so thank you all for listening again, and you can find the show notes and links on our website as usual, mypf.my/podcat. And don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Hasta pronto.